What if I told you that the primary reason you aren't building the muscle you actually want is because you are, well, working way too hard?
I mean, it sounds completely backward, doesn't it? We're just, so conditioned by decades of fitness marketing to believe that if we aren't completely destroyed by a workout, we're somehow failing.
Right, exactly.
Mm.
Welcome to Radio BFit. Take a deep breath, settle in, and just get comfortable.
Yeah, it's so wonderful to have you here joining us for this session today. We really want this time to feel like a comfortable space for you.
Just a quiet, focused moment in your day where we can kind of slow things down.
Exactly. The place to figure out the actual mechanisms of taking care of ourselves without all the usual shouting or pressure that you always find in the fitness space.
And speaking of that pressure, I feel like we have to talk about the quintessential gym experience.
That'd be
Because,
fun.
I mean, I've all been there, right?
Oh, absolutely.
You walk into a commercial fitness center. It's, say, the middle of January. The fluorescent lights are just buzzing. The music is blaring. And there is this sea of complicated equipment everywhere.
It's so overwhelming.
It really is. And you just kind of wander over to whatever chest and arm machines happen to be open at the time.
Right, because you don't really have a plan. You just want to do something.
Yeah, exactly. So you do a few sets of, I don't know, cable crossovers until your muscles are just burning. And then you wake up the next morning so incredibly full you can barely put on a jacket.
Oh, the putting on a jacket test? That's the worst.
It is. And you keep that up for a few weeks, right? But then a month later you look in the mirror and realize absolutely nothing has actually changed.
Yeah, your body looks identical. And that wandering syndrome is just incredibly common, and it's so deeply frustrating for people.
It really is, because you're putting in the effort.
Right. You're putting in real physical effort. You feel the soreness, and you naturally interpret that soreness as a signal of progress. The logic seems sound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, if I can barely lift my arms to steer my car today, so the muscle must be growing.
Exactly. But the reality of human physiology is that the discomfort you are feeling is often just structural damage and inflammation. It's not necessarily the specific mechanical trigger required for new tissue growth.
Huh. So soreness isn't the goal.
No, not at all. And when the results don't match the amount of sheer discomfort you've put yourself through, well, that is when most people just quietly cancel their memberships.
Man, yeah. It's kind of like trying to bake a cake by just throwing flour and eggs at the wall as hard as you can.
That is a perfect way to describe it.
The effort is definitely there,
Yeah.
but the structure is completely missing. So, all right, let's get into it, because today we are actually providing the recipe.
We're looking at a really fascinating stack of research papers and clinical studies on muscle hypertrophy today.
And specifically, a very clear 5-phase training guide that completely dismantles that whole no pain, no gain mythology. The fundamental premise here is incredibly refreshing, I think.
It really is. It's not about endlessly grinding yourself into dust. It's about rotating periods of calculated stress with periods of strategic recovery.
Right, giving your body the actual time it needs to adapt and change. And I want to reassure you listening right now, this is not some grueling extreme protocol meant for elite competitive bodybuilders.
Oh, definitely not. The literature outlines a very clear, manageable roadmap. It is specifically designed for you if you already know your way around the basic movements, but, maybe you feel stuck in a plateau.
Yeah, or if you are returning to the weights after a long break and you just want to do things intelligently this time. Knowledge really is your best personal trainer, and that's what BFit.ai is all about. We try to share everything you need to make fitness and wellness click. If you want a simple breakdown later, there are free articles that make all this stuff feel clear and doable.
That's a great point. So you don't have to scramble to take notes right now. Just listen, relax, and take it all in. But before we walk through the specific weekly breakdown of these 5 phases, we really have to establish the biological baseline.
Yeah, we have to look at the why before the how, right?
Exactly. The sources we're analyzing are very insistent on that. If we don't look at the cellular mechanisms that actually cause a muscle to grow, the program just looks like an arbitrary list of exercises.
Right, just another random workout.
Exactly. But once you understand the biology, the sequencing of the phases makes perfect, elegant sense.
Okay, so let's unpack the biology then. The research identifies 3 primary pillars that must be present to force muscle hypertrophy, which is just the scientific term for muscle growth.
Right.
The first pillar is mechanical tension. And on a surface level, I guess that just means lifting a heavy weight. But what is actually happening inside the muscle fiber when we apply that tension?
Well, this is where the science gets truly fascinating. Inside your muscles, you have these specialized proteins called integrins.
Integrins. Okay.
Yeah. You can think of them as tiny little mechanical sensors. When you lift a challenging weight, especially during a compound movement that stretches the muscle under a heavy load, these integrins physically deform.
Wait, they actually change shape.
Yes, exactly. And that physical stretching and deformation triggers a chemical cascade inside the cell, specifically activating something called the mTOR pathway.
Okay, mTOR. I've heard that thrown around in fitness spaces.
Yeah, it's essentially the master switch for protein synthesis. So mechanical tension isn't just about feeling a heavy weight. It is the literal physical key that turns on the cellular machinery to start building new muscle tissue.
Wow. That completely reframes how I think about picking up a dumbbell. I mean, I'm not just moving a piece of iron from point A to point B. I am actively trying to deform those integrins to flick the mTOR switch.
That is exactly what you're doing. And that brings us to the second pillar, which is training volume.
Right. The literature defines this as the total amount of quality work, usually measured in hard sets, that you perform over the course of a week.
Yes, but there is a massive caveat here that contradicts almost all old-school gym advice. More volume is only better up to the precise point that your body can recover from it.
Okay, so more is not always better.
Definitely not. The dose-response relationship of training volume is a bell curve. On the far left side of the curve, if you only do, say, 1 or 2 sets a week, the signal just isn't loud enough.
Right, it doesn't convince your body to invest the energy to build new muscle.
Exactly. It's a very energy-expensive process. Now, as you add more sets, the growth response goes up. But eventually, you reach the peak of that bell curve. If you keep adding sets beyond that peak, the line drops off a cliff.
Because you overwhelm your body's recovery budget, right?
Precisely. Your systemic resources are suddenly entirely devoted to just repairing the massive damage you caused, leaving absolutely zero resources left over for the actual growth of new tissue.
I see. So you aren't building a bigger house. You are just constantly repairing a burning foundation.
That's a really great way to put it.
Which flows perfectly into the third and probably most misunderstood pillar, effort close to failure. The research emphasizes that to trigger growth, your sets need to be hard, but you do not need to fail on every single set.
Right, and this goes directly against the hardcore gym mentality that has dominated the industry since, gosh, the 1970s.
But wait, let me push back on this a little because it feels counterintuitive.
Sure, go ahead.
If I am trying to force my body to adapt to a stress it isn't used to, shouldn't I push the muscle to its absolute physical limit? Like, if I leave reps in the tank, how does the muscle know it needs to grow?
It's a very fair question.
It just feels like I'm stopping right when the exercise starts getting useful.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if I'm not crawling to my car, I didn't work hard enough.
That is such a logical assumption, but it ignores the heavy physiological cost of training to absolute failure.
Okay, what do you mean by the cost?
Well, when you push a set to the point where the barbell literally stops moving and your muscles just give out, you aren't just fatiguing the local muscle tissue, you are causing immense fatigue to your central nervous system.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and you are depleting the calcium ions in the sarcoplasmic reticulum of the muscle cells. The amount of extra hypertrophic stimulus you get from that final agonizing rep is minuscule compared to the massive crater of systemic fatigue it creates.
So the juice isn't worth the squeeze, basically.
Exactly. The research clearly shows we can get about 95% of the growth stimulus by stopping just short of failure while only generating a fraction of the fatigue.
Okay, the sources introduce a metric for this called RIR, or reps in reserve.
Yes, RIR is crucial.
The idea is that for the vast majority of your working sets, you want to finish the set knowing you could have physically completed 1 to 3 more reps if your life depended on it.
It does require a lot of self-honesty to accurately gauge your reps in reserve, but it really is the sweet spot for sustainable progress.
It makes me think of an analogy. Managing your effort in the gym is a lot like managing the engine of a car.
Ooh, I like this.
Yeah, so if you want to commute to your destination efficiently and predictably, you want to drive at a brisk, steady highway speed, right? You are moving with purpose, the engine is working, but it's well within its capabilities. That is training with 1 to 3 reps in reserve. What you absolutely do not want to do is drop the transmission into first gear, floor the accelerator, and redline the RPMs until the engine block literally melts.
And the car breaks down on the side of the road?
Exactly. That is training to absolute failure on every set. You don't arrive at your destination any faster, you just destroy the vehicle.
I love that visualization. You are aiming for high-quality, repeatable performance. And the incredibly encouraging takeaway from modern sports science is that this highway speed effort works across a very wide rep range.
Really, so the specific number of reps isn't as important.
Not as important as the effort, no. Whether you are doing heavy sets of 5 or lighter sets of 15, as long as you are stopping just 1 to 3 reps shy of failure, the integrins deform, the MPOR pathway activates, and the muscle grows.
You are not locked into one magical rec scheme. That's a relief.
It gives you so much freedom. So let's take that understanding of tension, volume, and effort and actually apply it to the roadmap.
Let's do it. So phase 1 is the foundation phase. This covers weeks 1 through 4 of the protocol.
The primary objective of phase 1 is structural preparation. You simply cannot load a heavy barbell onto your back safely until your connective tissues, your tendons and ligaments are prepared to handle that physical shearing force.
Right, you have to build the base. So the setup for the foundation phase involves training 4 days a week using an upper-lower split.
Exactly.
That means you train the muscles of your upper body on Monday, your lower body on Tuesday, take a day of rest, and then repeat the cycle.
And the rep ranges here are kept intentionally higher, typically between 10 and 15 reps per set.
Why is that? Why not start heavy?
The reason for that higher rep range goes back to the connective tissues. While muscle tissue has a very rich blood supply and can adapt to stress relatively quickly, tendons and ligaments are practically avascular.
Avascular meaning they don't have much blood flow.
Right. Which means they take much longer to stiffen, adapt, and strengthen. By using lighter weights for higher reps, you are gently lubricating the joints and signaling those slower adapting tissues to start reinforcing themselves without overwhelming them.
That makes a lot of sense. The rest periods in this phase are also kept quite short, around 60 to 90 seconds between sets.
Yeah, it keeps moving.
And keeping with our RIR concept, you are leaving a very comfortable 2 to 3 reps in reserve. I noticed a crucial note in the guide. This phase should not crush you.
It really shouldn't.
It should leave you feeling energized and make you better at the physical skill of training.
Because exercise is a learned motor pattern. Your brain actually has to figure out how to fire the correct motor units in the correct sequence to perform, say, a dumbbell bench press or a Romanian deadlift smoothly.
Right.
If you load up the weight too heavy too soon, your form will inevitably break down because the nervous system just hasn't learned the movement yet. Phase 1 gives you 4 weeks to practice the skill of lifting with pristine technique.
Let's look at the specific staple movements the program recommends here. On the upper body days, the focus is on dumbbell bench presses, chest-supported rows, and overhead dumbbell presses.
Great choices.
Yeah, and on the lower body days, it relies on Romanian deadlifts, goblet squats, and planks for core stability. We aren't looking at obscure, complicated circus acts on a balance board here.
No, these are the fundamental, time-tested human movement patterns. And the progression model during these first 4 weeks is wondrously gentle.
How does the progression work?
You start with a weight that feels almost too light, ensuring your form is immaculate. Then you use a rep target. Let's say your goal is 3 sets of 10 to 15 reps.
Okay.
When you can comfortably perform 15 reps on all 3 sets with perfect control, that is your biological signal that the current tension is no longer enough to trigger adaptation.
Ah, so you've maxed out that weight.
Right. The next time you walk into the gym, you pick up the next heaviest dumbbell.
It is a slow, methodical climb.
Right.
You spend a month building that resilient foundation. Your form is locked in, your joints feel lubricated and healthy, and your nervous system understands the assignments.
It's the perfect setup.
And this perfectly sets the stage for the transition into phase 2, strength, which covers weeks 5 through 8.
Right.
This is where the biological demands shift significantly, right?
They really do. We keep the 4-day upper-lower split, but the entire profile of the workout changes. The anchor lifts, those big compound movements that start your workout when your energy is highest, drop down into the 4 to 8 rep range.
Oh, so we're going heavier.
Yes. Because you are lifting heavier weights for fewer reps, the metabolic demand is different. You are relying heavily on the ATP-PC energy system in your cells, which requires much more time to replenish.
So we have to rest longer.
Exactly. Your rest periods must increase to a full 2 to 3 minutes between sets.
And, that rest period is something people really struggle with. Sitting on a bench for 3 minutes feels like an absolute eternity if you are used to rushing through a circuit class.
It does feel long. But if you try to lift your heavy anchor weight again after only 60 seconds, You aren't training strength. You're just training metabolic fatigue.
Because the cells haven't recovered.
Right. Your cells simply haven't regenerated the phosphocreatine necessary to produce maximal force again.
That is a brilliant point. The goal here is neurological efficiency, not sweating profusely. So the anchor lifts in phase 2 are the barbell bench press, the heavy squat or leg press, the weighted pull-up or barbell row, and the conventional deadlift.
Those are the big ones.
You start your sessions pushing for pure strength on these movements. But the guide is very specific that you don't drop the reps on everything.
No, definitely not.
The accessory movements, the smaller exercises you do after the heavy anchors like bicep curls or hamstring curls, those stay up in the 8 to 12 rep range.
Because the accessory work remains in that moderate range to accumulate the necessary volume without frying the nervous system. The heavy anchors are the main course, and the accessories are the side dishes.
I like that. Now, bringing human psychology into this, because the weight is going up and the reps are going down, I have to wonder, is this the phase where people start ego lifting?
Oh boy, yes.
Because, you're suddenly doing sets of 5, the bar is getting heavy, you want to impress the people in the gym, so you start loading plates on the bar just to see what you can survive.
That is the ultimate trap of the strength phase. And the literature warns against it heavily. Phase 2 is about cleaner, heavier reps, not survival.
Right. It's not a powerlifting competition.
Exactly. If you add weight to the bar and your form degrades, like if your knees cave in on a squat or your hips shoot up early on a deadlift, or you have to contort your spine into a bridge to press the weight, the load is too heavy.
You're just cheating the movement.
And you are no longer placing the tension on the target muscle. You are distributing the stress onto your joints and lower back, which is a one-way ticket to an injury.
The progression rules here provide a great reality check for that. You add weight very conservatively. The recommendation is a 5-pound total increase for upper body lifts and a 5 to 10-pound total increase for the lower body lifts, and only when you hit the top of your rep range.
Right. You aren't making 20-pound jumps.
I think it is really vital to acknowledge how intimidating this phase can feel too. Holding a significantly heavier weight for the first time can trigger a bit of anxiety. The bar feels really dense.
It does. But we have to trust the biology. The entire reason you spent the last month in the foundation phase was to structurally alter your tendons and prime your nervous system for this specific moment.
You did the homework.
Yes. Your body is prepared for the load. You have earned the right to lift heavier.
That structured preparation removes so much of the anxiety. You aren't guessing if you are ready. The previous 4 weeks proved you are ready.
Exactly.
So we've built the work capacity in phase 1. We've upgraded the neurological horsepower and pure strength in phase 2. Now we arrive at the core of the system. Phase 3, the hypertrophy hustle.
The hustle.
Yeah. This runs from week 9 through week 14, and this is where we take the new strength we just built and use it to force massive tissue adaptation.
The intensity ramps up considerably here. The protocol shifts to 4 or 5 days a week, utilizing a push-pull leg split.
Okay, break that down for us.
We organize the training by movement patterns to manage overlapping fatigue. A push day targets the chest, shoulders, and triceps. A pull day hits the back and biceps. The leg day targets the quads, hamstrings, and calves.
So you aren't overlapping the muscles too much.
Right. The beauty of this split is that it allows you to train muscles with high volume while giving the opposing muscle groups time to recover.
The rep ranges in this phase shift back up into that classic muscle building zone of 8 to 15 reps. The rest periods tighten back up to 60 to 120 seconds, and the effort level pushes much closer to the red line.
It gets tough here.
Yeah, you are aiming for 0 to 2 reps in reserve on your final sets. The sources are very transparent about the reality of phase 3. This is the most grueling, metabolically demanding phase of the entire program.
It really is. You are taking the heavier weights you acclimated to in phase 2, and you are forcing your body to lift them for high repetitions.
That burns just thinking about it.
Oh, the cellular environment becomes highly acidic, metabolites pool in the muscle tissue, and the mechanical tension is immense. It is the perfect storm for hypertrophy, but it demands incredible mental fortitude.
To ensure that you don't just spin your wheels during this grueling phase, the guide introduces a secret weapon for continuous growth. It is a concept called double progression.
Yes, double progression.
And while it sounds like technical sports science jargon, the underlying math is beautifully simple and incredibly effective at forcing adaptation.
Double progression is the absolute antidote to the common gym plateau. It simply means you progress your training in 2 distinct sequential steps.
Okay, what's step 1?
First, you choose a target rep range. Let's use 8 to 12 reps as an example. You keep the weight exactly the same, session after session, until you can perform 12 reps on every single set of that exercise.
So you don't touch the weight at all.
You are strictly forbidden from touching the weight dial until you have completely conquered the rep dial.
Let's ground that in a real-world scenario because it solves so much frustration. If I am doing the leg press with 200 pounds, and on my first set I get 10 reps, my second set I get 9 reps, and my third set I only get 8 reps,
Right.
my brain usually tells me I need to add weight next week to keep getting stronger.
Right. That's the instinct.
But under double progression, I don't touch the weight. Next week, I use the exact same 200 pounds, and I try to get 11, 10, and 9 reps. I keep fighting for those reps until eventually I hit 12 reps, 12 reps, and 12 reps across all 3 sets.
That is exactly how the biology demands to be challenged. Forcing your body to hit the upper limit of the rep range ensures that the sarcoplasmic fluid in the cell and the mitochondrial density are fully optimized before you introduce more mechanical tension.
So it's preparing the cell for the heavier weight.
Exactly. Once you hit those 3 sets of 12, the green light flashes. The next session, you add a small amount of weight, maybe going up to 210 pounds.
And what happens then?
That new, heavier weight will naturally knock your performance back down to the bottom of the range, say 3 sets of 8 reps. And the entire progression cycle begins again.
It is such a rigorous, foolproof system.
Yeah.
But there is a massive catch here that we have to talk about.
Oh, a huge catch.
The entire system of double progression instantly falls apart if you do not track your lifts. I cannot emphasize this heavily enough. If you just wander into the gym, adjust the machine to whatever pin looks familiar, and try to guess what you did last week, you are completely shooting in the dark.
You really are.
The human memory is a terrible personal trainer. It is deeply unreliable, especially when you are fatigued.
Tracking is the non-negotiable anchor of progressive overload. If you do not know the exact numbers you hit last week, you cannot intentionally beat those numbers this week. You might treat your training like data collection.
Whether it is a battered spiral notebook you keep in your gym bag, a fancy spreadsheet, or just a simple notes app on your phone, you have to log the exercise, the weight, and the exact reps for every set.
It is the only way to prove to yourself that the stress you are applying is actually increasing over time.
Okay, so you spend 6 intense weeks in phase 3. You are pushing close to failure, meticulously tracking your data, grinding through double progression, and forcing the muscle to adapt. By the end of week 14, your body has changed, but your central nervous system and your joints are going to be feeling the immense cumulative stress of the last 3 months.
Oh, without a doubt, you will be tired.
Which brings us to the most overlooked aspect of long-term fitness, phases 4 and 5. Real life, recovery, and busy schedules. This is where almost all traditional programs fail the average person.
They really do. They demand endless linear progression until the individual either tears a rotator cuff or burns out psychologically.
Right, but biological growth does not happen when you're hoisting the weight, right? It happens when you are recovering from the damage. Phase 4 is the deload phase, covering weeks 15 and 16.
A deload is a period of planned, strategic underreaching. The setup drops you down to training just 3 days a week. We cut the total volume, the number of sets you're doing, by roughly 40 to 50%.
That's a huge drop.
It is. The weights stay moderate, but the effort level drops drastically. You are leaving 4 to 5 reps in reserve on everything. You are barely breaking a sweat.
Now, I will admit, whenever I read about taking 2 entire weeks easy after working so hard, my brain immediately hits the panic button.
Oh, I get it. It feels wrong.
The prevailing gym anxiety is that if I am not killing myself in the gym, my muscles are going to instantly shrink and I'm going to lose all the hard-earned gains from phase 3.
That anxiety is practically universal because we associate the lingering pump and the fatigue with the presence of muscle. But sports science relies on a principle called the fitness fatigue model, or Bannister's model.
Okay, what does that mean?
The core concept is simple but profound. Fatigue masks fitness.
Fatigue masks fitness.
Mhm.
Let's dig into the physiology of that because that is a total paradigm shift.
Yeah. When you are training intensely in a hypertrophy phase, you are absolutely building fitness. Your muscles are growing. Your structural capacity is increasing. But simultaneously, you are accumulating a massive amount of systemic fatigue.
Yep.
Think of fatigue as a heavy, wet blanket draped over your body. It makes you feel sluggish. It depresses your central nervous system so you can't recruit motor units efficiently. And it makes moderate weights feel incredibly heavy. It completely hides your true physical capabilities.
So the fatigue is suppressing the expression of the fitness I just built.
Precisely. A deload phase is not you being lazy or losing muscle. The biological decay rate of muscle tissue is much slower than we think. What the deload does is reduce the training stress just enough to let that heavy blanket of fatigue evaporate.
Oh, I see.
Because fatigue dissipates much faster than fitness, by the end of the 2 weeks, the fatigue is gone, but the structural fitness remains. The blanket is lifted, and your underlying strength and new muscle can actually be expressed.
That completely reframes the entire concept. It is not a retreat. It is a clearing out of the system.
Exactly.
The practical guidelines for these 2 weeks are just as important as the gym work, too. You need to focus on sleeping longer, eating nutrient-dense foods, taking daily walks, and letting your psychological motivation recharge.
Yes, the mind needs a break too.
The golden rule here is that you should walk out of the gym doors feeling physically lighter and more energized than when you walked in.
You let the fatigue clear out, and then you transition smoothly into phase 5. Maintain and reset, which spans weeks 17 through 20.
Okay, what does phase 5 look like?
The training frequency is 3 to 4 days a week, often utilizing a full body routine. The focus returns to the main compound lifts with moderate volume and moderate effort.
What I appreciate most about phase 5 is how deeply practical it is for real human beings. We don't live in a vacuum. Life gets chaotic.
It really does.
You have massive projects at work, the kids get sick, you have to travel for the holidays. This phase acknowledges that reality. It teaches us a vital physiological truth. You do not need to maintain maximum training volume indefinitely just to keep the muscle you have already built.
The science on maintenance volume is incredibly encouraging. Because of the permanence of myonuclei, the control centers inside the muscle cells that you built during the growth phases, it takes a fraction of the volume to maintain a muscle compared to what it took to build it.
That is such good news.
Right. You can easily maintain your new muscle mass with just 1/3 to 1/9 of the training volume, provided the intensity remains reasonably high. A brief 3-day full-body routine keeps the mechanical signal active, reminding your biology to hold on to the tissue without demanding your entire life.
It preserves your progress while giving you your free time back.
Yeah.
And the true genius of the system reveals itself at the end of week 20. You do not need to scour the internet for some brand new, confusing, magical routine.
No, please don't.
You simply loop right back to the beginning of phase 1. Start the foundation phase all over again.
But the context is entirely different now.
Exactly, because you are embarking on the journey with significantly more muscle mass, denser connective tissues, and a much higher work capacity than you had 5 months ago.
It creates a beautiful upward spiral of physical development. You repeat the same biological processes, but you are executing them from a continually higher vantage point.
So we have thoroughly mapped out the mechanical stimulus in the gym.
Yeah.
But there's a glaring reality we have to confront.
Oh, yes, the kitchen.
Right. You can send the mechanical signal to build muscle all day long, deforming those integrins and flipping the MTR switch. But if you do not provide the raw materials for the body to physically construct the new tissue, absolutely nothing gets built. That brings us to part 5, fueling the machine.
Nutrition is the undeniable reality check of this entire process. The training merely creates the demand. The nutrition is what fulfills it.
And there are 2 non-negotiable variables we have to manage, right? Dietary protein and your overall caloric intake.
Let's look at the quantitative targets from the research. For protein, the massive meta-analyses on resistance training suggest an optimal intake of 1.6 to 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day.
Okay, 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilogram.
And for overall energy, the recommendation is to eat at your maintenance calories, the amount required to keep your weight stable, plus a small controlled surplus.
Plus a little extra.
Right. You also need sufficient carbohydrates to fuel the intense glycolytic demands of the training, and dietary fats to maintain healthy hormone production, specifically testosterone.
That 1.6 to 2.2 gram range for protein is where muscle protein synthesis is maximized, right?
Yes. When you consume protein, specifically sources rich in the amino acid leucine, it acts as a secondary trigger alongside the mechanical tension to stimulate the building process.
But the caloric surplus is just as vital. Muscle tissue is metabolically expensive to build and to maintain. The laws of thermodynamics apply here.
They absolutely do.
You cannot build a new physical structure out of thin air. If your body senses that energy is scarce because you are in a caloric deficit, it will downregulate the expensive process of building new muscle to prioritize basic survival functions. You must provide a slight excess of energy to give your biology the green light to grow.
This highlights a very common point of friction. If you have been training hard for months, the scale isn't moving an inch, and the weights on your barbell are completely stalled out, The hard truth is that you are probably not eating enough food.
Yeah. We are notoriously terrible at estimating our caloric intake, which is why tracking your nutrition habits, even if just for a temporary 2-week baseline, can be an incredibly eye-opening experience.
Tracking your food intake mirrors the logic of tracking your gym lifts. It removes the emotional guesswork and replaces it with actionable data.
But we also have to recognize that weighing every single gram of rice and chicken breast on a digital scale for the rest of your life is a miserable way to live, especially if you have a demanding career or you want to go out to a restaurant with your family on a Friday night.
It's just not sustainable for most people.
No. The guide provides a fantastic visual heuristic called the Simple Muscle Building Plate. I rely on this heavily because it saves me from having to do complex macro algebra while trying to enjoy a social dinner.
The Simple Plate is an elegant tool for sustainable daily living. Instead of counting grams, you use your own hand as a proportional measuring tool.
Okay, how does it work?
For the majority of your meals, here is how you build the plate. You start with one palm-sized portion of a dense protein source. You add 1 to 2 fist-sized portions of complex carbohydrates. You fill another fist-sized portion with vegetables or fruit for micronutrients and fiber. And you finish with 1 thumb-sized portion of healthy dietary fats.
A palm of protein, fists of carbs, a fist of veggies, and a thumb of fat. It is incredibly visual and automatically scales to the size of the individual.
Because your hands are proportionate to your body size.
Right. If I am looking at a plate of grilled salmon, quinoa, and roasted asparagus with a drizzle of olive oil, I can instantly scan the ratios and know if I am hitting my targets without ever opening a tracking app.
It brings sanity back to eating. To hit that palm-sized protein requirement, you have incredible flexibility. Whole eggs, Greek yogurt, chicken breast, lean cuts of beef, fish, tofu, tempeh, or lentils. The options are endless once you understand the framework.
Now, we cannot discuss fitness nutrition without addressing the massive multi-billion-dollar elephant in the room, the supplement industry.
Oh, yes, the
The
supplement.
marketing is aggressive, preying on our desire for shortcuts. So, looking at the actual clinical evidence, what supplements legitimately matter?
The list of scientifically validated supplements is staggeringly short, which should honestly be a relief to your wallet. At the very top of the list is creatine monohydrate. The sources note that this is arguably the most researched, well-supported sports supplement in human history.
Let's briefly explain how creatine works because it isn't magic, it is just cellular biology.
Remember when we discussed the ATP-PC energy system during the heavy lifting of phase 2?
Yeah, the fast energy system.
Right. ATP is the fundamental energy currency of the cell. When a muscle contracts intensely, it burns an ATP molecule, turning it into ADP. Creatine acts as a backup reservoir of phosphate groups. It donates a phosphate to the ADP, instantly regenerating it back into usable ATP.
So it recycles the energy.
Exactly. By supplementing with 3 to 5 grams of creatine daily, you fully saturate those reservoirs. This allows you to squeeze out an extra rep or two during those high-intensity sets, which leads to greater mechanical tension, which leads to more growth.
It is a profound compounding effect over time. What about the massive tubs of protein powder lining the shelves?
Whey protein or high-quality plant-based protein powders are excellent tools, but we need to view them accurately. They are just highly convenient, powdered food. There is no magical hypertrophic property in whey that doesn't exist in a chicken breast.
So they aren't mandatory.
No. They are only necessary if you are struggling to hit your daily protein targets through whole foods. They make life easier, but they do not replace a solid diet.
And the final evidence-based supplement on the list is good old-fashioned caffeine.
Caffeine is a proven ergogenic aid. By blocking adenosine receptors in the brain, it lowers your perception of effort, allowing you to push harder and focus sharper during a grueling Phase 3 session.
But the literature attaches a very stern, non-negotiable warning to caffeine use, doesn't it?
It does. Do not use it to mask the systemic damage of poor sleep.
That is a critical point. If you are chronically exhausted because you are only sleeping 5 hours a night, pounding a 300 milligram energy drink in the parking lot before your workout is not the solution.
It's just throwing gasoline on a fire of central nervous system fatigue. Prioritizing deep, restorative sleep is the ultimate performance enhancer.
Exactly. Well, the science is very clear on that. And just as importantly, the guide explicitly advises you to completely ignore the heavily marketed testosterone boosters, the fat burners, and those proprietary muscle gain blends hiding behind secret formulas.
The clinical evidence shows they are almost universally ineffective. Save that money and invest it in higher quality groceries.
That brings us perfectly into part 6, reality checks, common mistakes, and the FAQ. It is time to clear up the lingering confusion and address the psychological pitfalls where the vast majority of people stumble.
It's so important to set expectations.
And the first reality check is managing our timeline expectations. We have to violently debunk a myth that is rampant on social media right now. You see programs everywhere promising that you will pack on 15 to 30 pounds of pure, rock-solid muscle in 12 or 20 weeks.
We need to categorically state that this is a biological impossibility for a natural trainee. It is predatory marketing designed to exploit insecurity and set people up for massive, crushing disappointment.
But people do gain weight quickly sometimes, right?
Yes, when a beginner starts training and eating in a surplus, the scale weight might shoot up 10 pounds in a month. But that is not 10 pounds of dry muscle tissue. A vast majority of that rapid weight gain is an increase in blood volume, stored intramuscular water, glycogen, and the literal weight of the extra food sitting in the digestive tract.
So if the 20-pound transformation in a month is a lie, how should we realistically set our mental clocks? What is a timeline that won't leave us feeling inadequate?
A much more grounded, biologically accurate timeline looks like this. At around 4 weeks of consistent, phased training and adequate protein, you will likely notice that your clothes are fitting a bit differently. Your shirts might feel a little tighter across the shoulders.
Okay, 4 weeks for clothes to fit differently.
Around 8 weeks, as the actual tissue accretion begins to outpace the inflammation, you will start to see visible changes in your muscle definition when you look in the mirror.
So 8 weeks to see it yourself.
But it usually takes a full 12 to 16 weeks or an entire cycle of this 5-phase program before the changes are significant enough that other people start noticing and commenting on your physique.
4 weeks for the clothes, 8 weeks for the mirror, 12 to 16 weeks for the rest of the world. Having those realistic milestones is so incredibly grounding. It shifts the focus away from manic scale watching.
The real sustainable metric of progress is what you do in the gym.
Exactly. If you are slowly adding weight to the bar, getting an extra rep on your double progression, improving your tape measurements, and keeping your waistline relatively stable while the scale slowly creeps up, you are succeeding.
Focusing on the performance metrics ensures that the mirror will eventually reflect the hard work. You have to let the biology take its time.
Let's jump into a rapid-fire session of the FAQ section, because the practical application always brings up specific questions. First up, can women utilize this exact 5-phase program, or do they need a quote-unquote toned and sculpted specific routine?
The answer is an unequivocal yes. Women should absolutely use this program. The fundamental principles of mechanotransduction, progressive overload, and the MTOR pathway apply identically to human physiology, regardless of gender.
So the program doesn't change.
The progression model remains exactly the same. The only minor practical adjustments relate to starting baselines. If a woman is beginning the program with a slightly lower baseline of absolute upper body strength, she might spend a little more time in the higher rep ranges during phase 1 to build that initial motor control.
That makes sense.
And while the total absolute pounds of muscle mass gain will differ due to the androgenic hormonal profiles, the relative proportional gains in strength and tissue are incredibly substantial and empowering. The idea that women need to lift pink 2-pound dumbbells to tone is a relic of bad 1980s marketing.
That is fantastic clarity. Next question. What about cardiovascular training? If I am trying to build muscle, will running on the treadmill destroy my gains?
Cardio is phenomenal for your cardiovascular health, your mitochondrial density, and your overall work capacity, which actually helps you recover faster between heavy lifting sets.
That's a good thing.
Yes. The guide recommends integrating 2 to 3 sessions a week of 20 to 30 minutes of moderate, steady-state cardio. A brisk incline walk or a light cycle is perfect. The only major caution is regarding the interference effect.
Tell me about the interference effect, because that sounds like the scientific reason people avoid the treadmill.
The interference effect happens when you send the body conflicting biological signals. Heavy lifting activates the MTOR pathway to build tissue. Intense, high-intensity interval training, or H8 sprints, activate a different pathway called AMPK, which is focused on endurance and actually inhibits MTOR.
Oh, I see. They fight each other.
So the recommendation is to absolutely do your steady-state cardio, but avoid grueling HIA sessions, particularly during the intense recovery demands of Phase 3. Let the weights provide the intense stimulus, and let the cardio be restorative.
Keep the cardio steady and separate. Makes perfect sense. Question 3. Can I execute this program in a home gym setup, or do I absolutely need access to a massive commercial facility?
You can execute this flawlessly at home if you invest in the right foundational equipment. You do not need 20 different specialized isolation machines.
What do you need then?
If you have a high-quality set of adjustable dumbbells that can go up to a genuinely challenging weight, a basic barbell with plates, and a sturdy adjustable bench, you have everything required to stimulate every single muscle group through its full range of motion. The commercial machines are convenient for stability, but free weights are the ultimate foundation.
Question 4, and this is a big one. What about the concept of muscle confusion? Should I be constantly changing my exercises every single week to shock the muscle and keep my body guessing?
This might be the most stubborn, pervasive myth in the entire fitness industry. Muscle confusion is purely an invention of television marketing to sell workout DVDs. It has zero basis in exercise science. In fact, it is actively detrimental to your progress.
Let's break down why it's detrimental, because it feels like variety should be a good thing.
Your body adapts to the specific, consistent demands placed upon it. Remember that lifting is a motor skill. If you change your chest exercise every single week, doing barbell bench on Monday, then dumbbell flies the next week, then cable crossovers the next, you never give your central nervous system the opportunity to actually master the movement pattern.
You're just constantly learning new skills instead of building strength.
Exactly. And more importantly, constant variation completely destroys your ability to track progressive overload. If you don't do the same exercise from week to week, you have no baseline data to know if you are actually getting stronger or just getting better at a new novel movement.
You have nothing to compare it to.
Right. You must stick to the same core exercises throughout an entire phase so you can quantitatively measure your progress. Progression drives growth, not random variation.
Stop trying to confuse your muscles and start progressively loading them with data. That is the takeaway. Final question. What is the single biggest mistake people make when attempting a structured protocol like this?
The most tragic mistake is program hopping. It happens constantly. Someone starts a brilliant, evidence-based program like this, they execute it well for 3 or 4 weeks,
And then what?
but because they haven't transformed into a fitness model in a month, anxiety sets in. They assume the program is broken, so they quit and go searching the internet for a new, magical secret routine. The harsh truth of physiology is that most people quit right before the structural results of their hard work actually become visible. You have to give the biological process the time it demands to work.
Trust the science, trust the phases, and trust the timeline. Well, we have covered an immense amount of ground today, navigating from the cellular biology of integrins all the way to the psychology of tracking your lifts. To ensure you can walk away from this deep dive and take concrete action today, we have distilled everything into a simple, plain language checklist for you.
Step 1. Pick your Phase 1 starting weights today. Remember the explicit goal of the first 4 weeks. Leave your ego in the parking lot. Start with weights that feel slightly too light and focus entirely on mastering beautiful, clean movement patterns to prep your connective tissues.
Step 2. Set up your non-negotiable tracking system. Whether it is a dedicated physical notebook or a simple app on your phone, commit right now to writing down the exercise, the weight used, and the exact reps achieved for every single working set. Treat it like vital data.
Step 3. Build your simple plate for your very next meal. Look at the food in front of you and visualize the ratios. Do I have a palm of protein? Do I have my fists of complex carbs and fibrous veggies? Start practicing that visual habit immediately so it becomes second nature.
And step 4. Commit to executing the first 4 weeks of the foundation phase without changing a single variable about the plan. Do not look for shortcuts, do not add random exercises, and do not fall for the muscle confusion myth. Give yourself the incredible gift of pure consistency.
It is a brilliant, actionable checklist. Taking those small steps today builds the momentum for the next 20 weeks.
And hey, if you're enjoying this deep dive, we'd love it if you hit like or leave a comment. It really helps us get better at what we do, and honestly, that support is heartwarming. It's what keeps us going and motivates us to keep creating these deep dives for you.
It truly means the world to us to know that this deep dive into the science is connecting with you and helping to demystify your journey.
Before we sign off, I want to leave you with one final, slightly provocative thought to mull over. We have spent this entire session exploring the biology of rotating periods of high mechanical stress with periods of active, planned recovery in the gym to build a stronger, more resilient physical body.
Yes, periodization.
But consider how this concept of phase stress and recovery applies directly to the rest of your life. If we constantly push ourselves at 100% capacity in our demanding careers or in the emotional labor of our personal relationships, without ever programming a deload week or a maintenance phase, we inevitably burn out there too.
Wow, that's so true.
We suffer the systemic fatigue of life. Periodization isn't just a clever strategy for building bigger biceps. It is a fundamental biological blueprint for sustainable, healthy living.
What a profound connection to make. We all require our phases of building a foundation, our phases of pushing to our limits, and our vital phases of intentional, unapologetic rest.
We really do. So take it one calculated rep at a time, both under the barbell and out in the world. Thank you so much for carving out this quiet time to be with us today.
Take wonderful care of yourself this week. We will be right here waiting for you next time. Goodbye for now.